Hi, my name is Lesley Graybeal, and I'm one of the co-founders with Kristen and Spickard of the CitiZine Project at the University of Central Arkansas. The CitiZine Project began in 2016 when we asked university students and community members of our local community of Conway, Arkansas, to reflect on the topic of what it means to be a citizen. In 2020, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which was intended to guarantee women the right to vote. These protections did not commonly extend to non-white women, however, and throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, the battle to expand access to the ballot has continued for African Americans, young people, people with disabilities, and many more. This year, we find ourselves again in a contentious election season and divided political climate, with new concerns about how people will vote safely during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the CitiZine Project is once again asking our neighbors to step back and reflect on how we participate in a democratic society and work together to break down the barriers to democracy that still exist. We have come a long way from the original notion of democracy that founding fathers envisioned for white male property holders. There were a lot of steps on the journey, but I want to highlight just a few. Additional recommended reading will be provided on our website. In 1870, the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, which stated that the right to vote could not be denied to a person based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Almost immediately, however, states began to craft other ways to prevent African American men from voting, such as poll taxes and literacy tests. In 1920, the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution granted women the right to vote. But because of the many barriers already in place to prevent African Americans from voting, the protections of the 19th Amendment did not extend beyond white women. In addition to the poll taxes and literacy tests that blocked African American people from access to the vote, citizenship restrictions prevented other racial minorities from participating in American democracy. For example, American Indians, indigenous to the land on which the United States was founded, were not granted citizenship until 1924, and subsequently faced barriers to voting that mirrored the Jim Crow policies disenfranchising African Americans. These discriminatory tactics were not addressed until the 24th Amendment was ratified in 1964 and the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. In 1971, the voting age was lowered from 21 to 18, granting young people the right to vote, and in 1982, Congress required states to add new protections for older voters and people with disabilities. When it comes to voter disenfranchisement, as a nation, we still face many challenges. In 2013, the Supreme Court in Shelby v. Holder removed the federal oversight that the Voting Rights Act provided in states that have previous history of race-based voter suppression. Key ways in which voters are disenfranchised today include through voter ID laws, which make voting more difficult for low-income voters and voters of color in particular, and felony disenfranchisement, which limits the ability of people with current or previous felony convictions to vote. The Sentencing Project estimates that 6 million Americans are blocked from the ballot as a result of felony disenfranchisement. And because of racial discrimination in our criminal justice system, felony disenfranchisement currently prevents 1 in 13 African Americans of voting age from participating in the election. And in our present COVID-19 pandemic, voters in low-income and rural areas, voters of color, older voters, and voters with disabilities or health concerns all face barriers as election commissions and individual voters grapple with the challenges of balancing access to the vote with safety during a pandemic. And we see policies and procedures for voting by mail that differ widely from state to state. But the challenges we face today are only the newest challenges to full participation in the voting process. The history of voting rights is full of hidden figures and citizen heroes, and we're asking you to share your voice as one of the many that forms our American democracy. I want to end this workshop by encouraging you to create your own zine focused on one of the following topics: why your vote matters, your first voting experience, what being a citizen means to you, your voting right heroes, and hidden figures of the suffrage and civil rights movements. And of course, I want to encourage you to submit a copy of your zine to the CitiZine Project. You can find out more about the project and view submission information by visiting uca.edu/outreach/CitiZine. We would love to receive your submission and include it in an online gallery of community-created zines. As the late Congressman and civil rights icon Representative John Lewis said in 2019, "The vote is precious. It is almost sacred. It's the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democracy." So what does the vote mean to you this election season? And how will you protect it for elections to come?